Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how there appear to be some different Nintendo Switch 2 Direct related leaks, as well as a theory about the release date that is gaining more and more steam. So we may have a better picture of when the Switch 2 is coming out, and some different games we may be seeing in the Switch 2 Direct presentation, so that's what I want to dive into today. But before going forward, let me take a moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit that notification bell. So let's first talk about this theory that is gaining more and more steam. Back in January, I put together a video where I theorized the Nintendo Switch 2 could be launching on May 15th. And there's a variety of reasons why I theorized that, and we'll summarize some of it here. But there have been some recent happenings that are supporting the idea more so. Now, firstly, there's already a great deal of people who believe the Switch 2 is launching in either May or June. There's been some rumors about it. But of course, not everyone believes it's coming out then, not everyone wants to believe the rumors. But a recent discovery on Family Boards from user Lick is suggesting that there may definitely be a lot of Switch 2s ready very soon, so a launch in May or June may make a lot of sense. As we're seeing here from this article from Go Nintendo, because the Family Boards post is actually privated, a Vietnamese manufacturer, HVBG, was contracted by Nintendo to produce over 383,000 units of Switch 2, and they were shipped to North America back in January. So in just North America, in January, there were already 383,000 Nintendo Switch 2s. And so presumably, month by month, that number would increase, it would ramp up, and if you also account for other markets, come May or June, there's going to be a handful of million Switch 2 units ready to launch. So the point here is that it's very conceivable that the Switch 2 could be coming out this soon. And when you consider how Nintendo handled Switch 1, it was revealed October 20th of 2016, and then on January 13th of 2017, they had their big presentation telling us everything we need to know about the console, and then it launched on March 3rd. From reveal to release, that was a 4-month and 2-week window. So given that Nintendo has given us the reveal trailer for Switch 2 on January 16th of this year, 4 months and 2 weeks later would position us for the beginning of June. And so things are lining up there. But my theory is not for the beginning of June, but rather May 15th. And there's a few reasons why. One of the reasons, the gap of time between the Switch 2 reveal and its big presentation, the Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd, is actually shorter than the gap of time from the Switch 1 reveal and its big presentation. And if Nintendo were to maintain this faster pace, as opposed to having a 4.5 month gap of time between reveal and release, it's looking like 4 months, which positions us for May 15th. As of last year, all the releases have been happening on Thursdays. But something else interesting when we take a look back at how things happened with the Switch 1, there were preview experience events as well for that console, and when they ended, the console launched immediately afterwards. So they ended at the beginning of March, and Switch 1 came out March 3rd of 2017. And so looking at the Switch 2 experience events, they end on May 11th. All the events planned for North America, Europe, and Oceania will be done by that point. Now, there will be some in late May, early June, but that's in Asia, where Nintendo typically releases their products a little bit later. In other words, it looks like if Nintendo is doing the same thing as they did in the past, Switch 2 is coming out after May 11th, shortly afterwards, which puts us in the week of May 15th. But there are more weird oddities that have popped up. Microsoft has announced that Doom Dark Ages is coming out on May 15th. Almost all their published titles come out on Tuesdays, not Thursdays. Thursdays is for Nintendo, so this is a very weird situation, and Doom is expected to come to Switch 2 eventually, so it may be a launch title. Also, a lot of other smaller games are coming out in the second half of May, like Blades of Fire, Fantasy Life I, and more, and perhaps smaller devs are putting out these different games in the second half of May to take advantage of the Switch 2 launch. We got the announcement of the release date of the big Mario Kart Lego set, It's releasing on, you guessed it, May 15th. And this is weird because almost all LEGO sets in these current times, because this is how LEGO operates now, if you look throughout the past, I'm sure you'll find some exceptions, but now, their LEGO sets come out on the 1st. For the most part. If you look at all the different Nintendo LEGO sets, they tend to come out on the 1st. If you look at other video game related sets like Sonic, they come out on the 1st. Looking at this list here, there are 56 different LEGO sets that are coming out in 2025, and they're all coming out on the 1st. Well, almost all. 54 of 56 of the LEGO sets listed on this site here that are all coming out in 2025 are releasing on the 1st. There are only 2 exceptions. And so the point is, for the Mario Kart LEGO set to be releasing on May 15th, it's a very unusual circumstance looking at how LEGO operates now. So you have this unusual situation with Doom Dark Ages coming out May 15th, which is not something Microsoft would do. And we also have the Mario Kart LEGO set coming out on May 15th, something that LEGO would not normally do. And then we also believe that Mario Kart is going to be the launch title for Switch 2, given that they showed it off in the reveal trailer. And so it would make sense to put out a LEGO set of Mario Kart on that day to capitalize off the hype of a new Mario Kart game. But today, something else very interesting happened, and I got a lot of mentions on Twitter because of it, so that's why I'm talking about this now. And basically, Nintendo of America announced, on May 15th, Nintendo will open the doors to Nintendo San Francisco, its second official store in the United States. And so this is another very interesting thing that's happening on May 15th. It continues to pile up. Now, some people are going to counter and say that this doesn't mean the Switch 2 is coming out on May 15th. By itself, it doesn't. But when we think about everything else, the date starts to become more and more curious. Some people will argue, though, that they wouldn't want to have a store opening on the day of a new console launch, but I'm going to argue to the contrary. If Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out May 15th, what are people going to do? They're going to go to stores and check it out. So the brand new Nintendo store, where are they going to go? That's where they're going to go. There's going to be so much excitement about the Switch 2, a lot of people are going to enter those doors and become aware that, hey, yeah, there is a Nintendo store here in San Francisco now. So I think it'll actually be a great way to open things up. Now, yes, there will be quite a rush, and it'll be a little bit challenging to handle, but that's why Nintendo will train their staff to handle this opening. And also, pre-orders and such are going to be made beforehand, so there's going to be limited quantities of the Switch 2. That initial rush is just going to be in the beginning of the day when people pick up their consoles. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people coming in throughout the day to check things out, but it's not going to be totally unbearable the entire day. It's just going to be when people are lining up to pick up the console early in the morning. And so there will be a lot of sales to be had and recognition to be gained by having the store open on the same day that their next generation console is coming out. Now, if you don't buy that argument, I will point something else out. When the Nintendo New York store opened back in 2005, this was on May 14th, a Saturday, the weekend. And back in 2005, the day that Nintendo liked to release their games was Monday. But now here, in 2025, 20 years later, they like to release their games on Thursday. And when is the Nintendo store opening up? A Thursday. Not the weekend, a Thursday. So, this is a very peculiar time. If they wanted to avoid the whole crazy console rush thing, then they would open the store on a weekend, like the original Nintendo store in North America opened. And here's just another thing to consider when you kind of like take a step back and think about it. A Nintendo store opens, you go to it, and it doesn't have their next generation console that's about to release or has already released. That doesn't make sense to me, unless of course there's just no shipments available. So to me, this actually makes a great deal of sense. And I do find myself even more full-heartedly believing that May 15th is our most likely date for the release of the Switch 2. And I want to stress the wording I'm using here. Our most likely date. It is not guaranteed to be May 15th. It would not be the first time it seemed like we had overwhelming evidence and it didn't quite amount to what we thought. So, yes, temper your expectations. maybe the Switch 2 doesn't launch May 15th, but it does feel like our best bet at this current point, and we're almost certainly going to know the actual release date come April 2nd during the Switch 2 Direct. But that's not the only thing we're probably going to learn in the Switch 2 Direct. We're going to learn about the console and different games, and as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, there have been some different things popping up that seem to be giving us a better understanding of what may be there. And so first, let me point out here that we had a leak, an actual leak of different Microsoft planned titles over the next few years. And one of them included an Oblivion remaster, or perhaps remake. And recently, Nate the Hate, a known industry insider, was asked, "Hey Nate, are you expecting news about the Oblivion remake this month?" And Nate responds, "Either this month or next month. Release is likely to be sooner than the original June target, but still working to get details on an updated release date." So Nate is here saying that this Oblivion game is about to come out really soon, like not even June, before June. And we're already in March, so sounds like we're getting pretty close. And on top of that, Video Games Chronicle is actually corroborating what Nate the Hate is saying here. Apparently the remake is set for reveal in the coming weeks and will likely release before June. And also, since initially was mentioned as a remaster, here they're saying the Oblivion remake is reportedly fully remade with Unreal Engine 5 with 6 reworked gameplay systems: stamina, sneaking, blocking, archery, hit reaction, and the HUD. So to me that sounds pretty cool. I'm actually really interested in this game. That sounds awesome. But what's also interesting about this report here is that Virtuous is apparently the studio that is developing this remake. Now, looking at Virtuous's history, they're actually responsible for some pretty significant Nintendo Switch 1 ports, such as Nier Automata, or Destroy All Humans, XCOM 2, BioShock, The Outer Worlds, one of our favorites, Astral Chain, also Starlink, Dark Souls Remastered. So Virtuous is responsible for some pretty significant Switch ports, and we're getting reports that they are responsible for the remake of Oblivion. Its reveal time is supposedly a few weeks from now, which, by the way, what's also a few weeks from now? The Switch 2 Direct. And it's supposedly coming out before June, and we now have all of this mounting evidence that the Switch 2 itself is launching before June. I think May 15th. And so I think it may actually be pretty reasonable to believe that an Oblivion remake may have its full-on reveal in this Switch 2 Direct, or perhaps it happens right before because it is a Microsoft thing, and then it's also confirmed during this presentation that it's coming to Switch 2, and its release time is coming out during the Switch 2 launch. And what would be fascinating about this is that all of a sudden, we might have multiple huge Microsoft published titles coming out during the launch of Switch 2. Doom Dark Ages and Oblivion Remake. And there's something interesting about this, because when we go back to the Switch 1 reveal, what was one of the key titles that they had there to feature for the console? It was a Skyrim remaster. And so now, interestingly, an Oblivion remake is perhaps going to be part of this Switch 2 marketing campaign. And that to me is very intriguing, and I'm very excited for this game. But there may be more in this Switch 2 Direct that we have recently gone perhaps a little bit more information on. So many of you may have heard about Split Fiction, just came out. A lot of people are very excited about it. Well, some people have pointed out to me this.
How the f did you know?
You just feel like that.
Weird. I love Cold Punch.
Is Split Fiction going to be a launch game for the Switch 2?
Ooh! You almost got me there, man. We'll see what happens.
And so the director of Split Fiction, Joseph Fares, did not deny that Split Fiction might be a launch title for Switch 2, and so it might make a lot of sense to think that this game will also show up in the Switch 2 Direct and be coming out in that launch window. It makes a lot of sense to me. But in terms of leaks, is there anything else currently that we know that could give us some insight into what will show up in the Switch 2 Direct? And the answer is probably yes. So, some of you may remember we've talked about a few times in the past how Midori, someone who hasn't been posting lately at all, I actually don't think I can find their account anymore, but they are a very well-known leaker who has a great deal of credibility. Now, they've done some shady things, but their leaks are still legitimate, and most of the things they've talked about have turned out to be true. And they shared a lot of different code names for Nintendo. Here I have Google sharing most of them. U-King-O, that's for a Breath of the Wild remaster. Banquet is actually for a new Mario Party game, and we now know that is Super Mario Party Jamboree, so this part's already been confirmed. We also already have it confirmed that Ounce is the codename for Switch 2 based off the Game Freak leaks, which mentioned Ounce as for Switch 2, so that's already been confirmed. Edward was a codename for a Zelda game, and we have that confirmed as well. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, so several of these things have already been confirmed, but there are more. Anna is believed to be some sort of follow-up to Switch Sports. Silver Star, I theorize, might be related to a new Donkey Kong game, but all we know is that it's somehow related to Mario Odyssey. SP Red is believed to be the codename for 3D Mario. Legacy is believed to be the next project from Monolith Soft, a new IP, not Xenoblade Chronicles X. As you see here, these are the different Xenoblade codenames, so it does not match up to X at all. This is something else entirely different, and we've been waiting on this new IP for a very long time. And one that's not showed off in this little Google thing here is Spiral, which is believed to be the follow-up to Splatoon. And so when we look at Banquet and Edward, we got these codenames last year, and they materialized into, Nintendo Switch 1 games, and then Ounce we now know is Switch 2, and that's coming out this year as well. There appears to be an implication that these other codenames are tied to Nintendo games that are coming out relatively soon. And so these games may all show up in the Switch 2 Direct. Some sort of enhanced version of Breath of the Wild, U-King-O. 3D Mario in SP Red, that one's fairly easy to predict. But Legacy, a new title from Monolith Soft. Given that we're getting Xenoblade Chronicles X this month, we may not see it in the Switch 2 Direct, but we also might. If they've been working on it throughout the entire Switch generation, they might have more than one title that is ready to go fairly soon. Another Splatoon game, that makes sense to get ready early on for a Switch 2 generation, and then a Switch Sports follow-up would also make a lot of sense to get out early on, and maybe that takes the place of something like a 1-2 Switch, because, well, Switch Sports, quite frankly, is just way better. So I'd actually be very excited for this, and some of these codename titles may show up in the Switch 2 Direct as well. And so less than 3 weeks out from the Switch 2 Direct, while there's clearly a lot of question marks as to what this presentation will overall have and show, it does seem like we have some pretty interesting clues. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.